Hidden Object Guru here with another reaction video. This is Larry Bundy's channel. He does histories of video games, and he does little compilations of stuff. And I gotta say, I have liked his channel in the past. I think he generally does a good job. But I started watching this video, and he was so completely wrong about what he said. Like, so completely, utterly, just absolutely wrong in the first segment that I'm like, well, gotta make a reaction video. So I stopped watching the video, rewound it, and here we are. Just FYI, the reason I'm taking this so personally is this video is called 5 Totally Idiotic Things Said by Game Journalists 2, so it's the second one. And I am a game journalist. I don't know if I talk about that much. I write reviews for game critics, have since the early 2000s. I have written close to 1,000 video game reviews. My reviews have been referenced in sequels to video games that I have reviewed. Like, I am very deep into the video game reviewer community and mindset. So, it's an issue, is my point. Oh, and at the start of the video, he shows some clips from a couple of games. And I'm like, I suspect they might all be referencing, like, dumb things critics have said in the past. So, this, I think, might be, like, the original Virtua Racer for, you know, like 32X or something, and maybe something. The reason I suspect that, right? Because the second clip he shows is from Aliens versus Predator on the Jaguar. And, like, people said a lot of amazing things about how great that was and really oversold the game. So, maybe that's why that's there. Or maybe he just picked a couple of footage. Senzo and Alaric. I don't even know what that fighting game is.
Years ago, I made an episode of Fact Hunt based on all the dumb things said by games journalists. However, to everyone's...
Just for the record, generally I don't have a ton of respect for IGN either. I don't think they're great at reviewing games. But when you see what the first segment is, you'll see why I don't like his takes either.
Surprise. I know, right? This was merely the tip of the iceberg. And if anything, they're even worse this time around. So, this episode, we once again take a look at these ridiculous reports, these moronic motions, and these doltish descriptions. As I say, but hello you. I'm Guru Larry, and I welcome...
I normally listen to everything at 3.2 speed, so I hope you appreciate that this is torture for me. I already hated his takes, and having to listen to him at 1 speed, actually 1.25 is torture for me. Alright, here we go.
You to Fact Hunt. 5 more idiotic things said by games journalists.
Alright. Okay, let's just skip that, because they're not paying me. I don't even know what they were selling. GameSpot, Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Breeze. I played this game, by the way.
The poor Wii U. It never really stood a chance to be a success. Between its ridiculous name, its poor initial reveal, and its flawed 2-screen core concept, it was doomed to fail.
Just for the record, Larry's wrong about this. Larry's wrong about this. The only reason the Wii U failed, the only reason, is that it was called the Wii U. And so it had created brand confusion. Basically, everyone across the world thought that the Wii U was an attachment you bought for the Wii. And they're like, I don't need a $400 attachment for my Wii. And that's what happened. If they had branded and marketed it as the Wii 2 with all these amazing new features, it still wouldn't have done as well as the Wii. Because, let's face it, the Wii got people off their couches playing tennis. That's why it was a giant seller. But it would have sold fine. The 2 screens were great. I still use my Wii U, okay? It's a great system. And it was the stepping stone that led to the Switch. So, nothing wrong with the Wii. Or the Wii U. And the only thing wrong with the Wii U was its name.
But like Sega's Dreamcast, it was an ill-fated console with a fantastic library of games.
That is true.
One such game was Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, which is a fun platform game starring Nintendo's famous ape. The game reviewed quite well overall and scored decently on Metacritic. However,
Fair.
one outlet thought,
I feel like it's more like a 7, but you know, I've never been a giant fan of the Donkey Kong Country games, so you might not want to go by me on this one.
it was pretty average. GameSpot. They awarded the title just 6 out of 10 on the Wii U, saying that the platforming was cheap and the level design was dull. Now, as we all know, the Wii U was a commercial failure and didn't sell many units. However, Nintendo's follow-up console, the Nintendo Switch, sold like body pillows at an anime convention. So,
You make me sad sometimes, Larry.
with explosive hardware sales, Nintendo decided to re-release Wii U games that didn't sell well on a popular Switch console. So when the big N got around to resurrecting Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, GameSpot reviewed it again, but this time gave it 9 out of 10. So what's going on here then, I hear you ask? GameSpot's opinion had jumped from Donkey Kong being an average game to a great one.
Now, I've already seen this, right? So, obviously. But even the first time I saw, when he's like, what happened here? My first thought, of course, was it reviewed by 2 different people? Spoiler alert, it was.
Did this mean that the Switch version was vastly superior to the Wii U release? No! Outside of some faster loading times, it was literally the exact same game. So what's happened here is that GameSpot has reviewed the same game twice and has given extremely different scores each time. Now, yes, it is different people reviewing each version, but only about 2 people in the world are going to know that Peter Brown liked it more than Mark Walton.
Apparently only 2 people in the world are capable of looking at the name that is under the title of the review. 2 people in the world.
And the general public do what Metacritic does, and just put the review scores down as what GameSpot said. And in this case, it looks like GameSpot can't make up its bloody mind.
So, what Larry has done here is suggested that video game reviews are not a person's opinion. They are not a form of art in their own way. They are not anything creative at all. He's saying that video game reviews are nothing more than an official buying guide number. And as such, once you've stated what the buying guide number is, you have to be consistent in that. So Larry has here, we are 5 minutes into a 15-minute video, so 1/3 exactly, basically, through this video, expressed that he doesn't know what a game review is, he doesn't know what game reviews are for, and he thinks it's dumb that 2 different people had 2 different reactions to a game. Because it makes a website look inconsistent. Like, my own, I mean, it's not my website, but the website I write for literally regularly does second opinions, where 2 different people review the same game within a couple of weeks of each other. So you can see varied takes on a game for this exact purpose. And he's mad. He's not mad, he's just smug. He's smug because, like, 10 years apart, okay, probably not 10, but whatever, 2 different people felt differently about a game. So, does he think they should have just republished the Wii U review? Or that they should have hired someone to review it on the Switch under the condition that it had to end up with the same score, and they should write the review to hit that score? Because that's not being a game reviewer. I don't even think there's a word for that job. I mean, it's being a PR shill, obviously. But here you wouldn't be doing PR for Nintendo, or... No, Rare probably didn't make that one. They definitely didn't know. What am I saying? It would be doing PR for GameSpot itself to create an air of infallibility, which is the opposite of what you want from your review sites. Like, this is such a bad take. I had to go and do this. All right. Okay. What the hell? Apparently the second one is Doom. Someone gave Doom a bad review? That's actually kind of shocking to me, but let's see where it goes. I mean, I've been playing Doom since... I'm old as the hills. Been playing Doom since I got it on floppy disks from someone in high school who had a modem. So that's how long I've been playing Doom. And I loved it.
Doom and Edge magazine. Two things are held in high regard by the gaming public. Doom being the seminal first-person shooter that essentially kick-started the entire genre, and Edge
I mean, that's Wolfenstein, but anyway.
magazine, one of the last bastions of quality gaming print media. So it may surprise you to know that these two things collided back in 1994. Readers of Edge magazine were served up with a hot plate
Thank you for stopping doing that annoying sound.
of stupidity. Now, Edge's review arrived just a few months after the game's initial shareware release, and it acknowledges that most of the world had already sang this game high praises already. But it does seem that, in this case, Edge was trying to be harsh on the game just for the sake of being different.
Okay, now, what Larry has done there has ascribed a motive to their review. And he is essentially accusing them of either purposefully writing a bad review just for the attention, which, spoiler alert, in 1994, people didn't do that on the level they do now. I'll explain why in a second. Or a editor either commissioning a bad review or assigning a reviewer who they knew was going to hate it. Or, third option, someone pitched a review of Doom, phoned him up, one of his normal reviewers, I assume it's a man, might not be, phoned the editor-in-chief up and said, I hated Doom, can I write a review about it? And they said, let's go. And one of those is fine. The one where the reviewer hated Doom. But the other two would not be fine. But I don't think that's what happened, and I'll explain why in a second.
However, there's trying to be different, and just being asinine. Like agreeing the game is a technological achievement, but then saying it lacks the ability to look up and down, like in Ultimate Underworld. This on screen now is Ultimate Underworld.
I also played Ultimate Underworld, so the reviewer is right. Here's a fun fact about Doom. It's not actually in 3D. Like, the game is in 2D. All of the levels are completely flat plains, and you never, walk on a bridge over someplace you can walk under. All of the maps are 2D flat plains. You can actually play all of Doom on the map mode as an arrow. I mean, you shouldn't, but you can, and you'll notice that there's no overlapping because the engine was not capable of that. Ultima Underworld, on the other hand, is a true 3D experience in an actual 3D space. Doom didn't even have mouse look, where you aim around the screen. And, I mean, there's no real mouse look in Ultima Underworld. You had to, do weird stuff with your mouse on the screen to control movement. But fundamentally, Ultima Underworld is a 3D game, and Doom isn't. Okay. And I pressed the wrong button.
Yes, this is seriously what Edge are comparing Doom to in technical ability.
It is more technically impressive than Doom.
Or how about asking if there's anything in Doom that actually sets it apart from an average 2D shoot-'em-up, because the gameplay loop was just kill, kill, kill.
Well, there isn't. And it's fine to like that, but the reviewer's not wrong. Doom is a very repetitive game. I know it's not the most popular thing to say in the world, but the only good part of Doom is the first chapter, the shareware chapter. I've played all three, and the second two chapters aren't as good as the first one. They put all the good, innovative, new looks and the fun and the crazy gameplay all in the first act. And that's what they put out as shareware to get people to buy the other two. And the other two just aren't as good. The bosses aren't as interesting. The level design isn't as interesting. The game gets tedious fast. I know it has its fans, but Doom is for that first experience to thrill you with something you've never seen before. And it gets worse the longer it goes on.
Well, there's Darius Force on the SNES, released about the same time as Doom, and as you can see from these review scores, possibly the most average example of a shoot 'em up. Now, with these two games set side by side, let's just read Edge's words again and let this insanity sink in. What is there really in Doom to set it above the most average, most highly repetitive and tedious 2D shoot-'em-up? But it's
I mean, the game on the left, I saw quick movement, I saw a variety of weapon types quickly, I saw a huge variety of enemies, I saw colorful backgrounds, like... Why is that one... Why is Doom supposed to be better than that? I'm not sure. They're different kinds of shoot-'em-ups, but one of them is more visually interesting, and it's not Doom.
the final words of the review that'll really have you scratching your heads and wondering what the hell Edge was smoking when they wrote this drivel. They're calling Doom a shallow game, but have an idea how it could be more...
Doom is a shallow game. Like, the reviewer is right. It is extremely shallow. There is no depth of any kind to Doom whatsoever.
engaging. If only you could talk to the creatures, then perhaps you could try and make friends with them, form alliances. Now, that would be interesting. Yes, Edge, what a fantastic idea it would be to break up this fast-paced action shooter with dialogue sections. Instead of firing a rocket launcher at a Baron of Hell, maybe you could have a nice chat and a coffee. What a bunch of morons.
Okay, so first off, Larry, excellent work doing a funny voice. But more importantly, you know that guy just describing Fallout 3, right? Like, that's what he's describing. He's saying, why can't you aim for something more? Why can't you have fast action and quests and dialogue and a plot and characters? And he's talking about Fallout 3. A game that I'm sure you, Larry Bundy... I mean, maybe you haven't praised Fallout 3, but you've definitely praised Fallout New Vegas. And here's a fun fact. Doom originally had a story, but they were so bad at writing, and like their attempts to make cutscenes were so awkward and awful that they gave up on Doom having a story. But it did originally have a story. They were just so bad at making stories that they gave up on it. Which, if you look at their later games that do have stories, are like, you're like, yeah, okay, no, they were right to give up on stories. Okay, here we go. I am so, like, weirded out to find out what's third. Like, so this is 2 in a row where Larry Bundy is just kind of terrible and dismissively scoffing at people who don't agree with his opinions and saying that it's, like, objectively idiotic and dumb that they said these things. But it's like, A, their complaints about Doom was, it's repetitive. Doom is repetitive. The guy says after 2 weeks of playing it, you'll have seen everything it can possibly do and not be interested anymore. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. So, A, Doom is incredibly repetitive. B, it's not actually 3D. It's not. And C, why not do something with more depth? And Doom is as deep as a, like, oven tray. So, everything that reviewer said, you can easily defend. And Larry, coming from a place of, well, Doom's an important game. See, Larry? That's me doing a funny voice to represent your opinions. Because by doing a funny voice, it says the opinions aren't valid. But I'm not actually... But here's the fun part. I'm actually going to point out why your opinions aren't valid, right? Instead of just doing the funny voice. So, your opinions aren't valid because you're coming from a place of... Doom was fun for me to play, and it spawned a lot of shooters, so it was incredibly important. But it could have been better, and I know that he's right about it could be getting better because other people came along and made better versions of Doom. So the dude was like, we should ask for more from our shooters than mindless bloodshed, and then every other game developer agreed with that. Doom 3 did exactly what the guy said. The Doom remakes, or continuations, whatever you want to call the new Dooms, did exactly what this guy wanted them to do. Like, you literally team up with monsters in the new Doom games. So, this guy has been vindicated by history. Not just in the entire video game industry as a whole, but in the Doom franchise itself. And Larry is mad at him for... being right? Alright, let's move on to the third game. Okay, apparently EGM did not like Star Fox. Which is fair. Star Fox isn't a good game. We're not talking about like Star Fox 64, which was a little better, or the one on the GameCube, which is actually a very fun game. And then there's the one for the Wii U, which is hot trash. But I like Dinosaur Planet. Okay.
EGM, or Electronic Gaming Monthly, was an American gaming magazine that ran from 1980.
Is that R-Type on the right? Or a Gradius? I can never tell. I'm so terrible at side-scrolling shooters that I forget the details.
88 to 2009. And over that sort of long time span, obviously something silly.
Oh, the joke is he's showing Nintendo versus Sega. Okay, I don't know why the video just reset. That was weird.
He was going to get written down. But for now, we'll focus on the absurdity that was found within the pages of the April 1993 edition.
Well, the absurdity in that edition was in anyone in any way complimenting Bram Stoker's Dracula. But whatever he's going to say, he's just wrong about.
Which had a section covering both Star Fox on the Super NES and Sylphid on the Mega CD.
Okay.
Most people watch it will obviously know Star Fox on the SNES already. Well, unless you lived in the UK, as it was called Star Wing here, because the former name was already taken by an 8-bit computer game. Or the name of a German company called Star Vox, depending on who your source is. So that was one of the games in the EGM article. The other was Sylphid on the Sega Mega...
Isn't it kind of amazing how much better Sylphid looks than Star Fox? Like, smooth frame rate, quick action, it's not chunky and slow. Like, I mean, of course it has a huge advantage. It has a CD to pull from, but this looks like a way better game.
Yes, CD. Now, Sylphid is the one that you're probably less familiar with. Like Star Fox, it used simple polygon graphics for the player and enemy spaceships, as well as for projectiles and power-ups. Where it didn't use polygon graphics was in those glorious backgrounds you can see on screen. This is a well-constructed FMV trick using a very particular colour palette to avoid any video dithering.
Yeah, this is a thing they used to do in old CD games all the time. They would have an animated background, right? Rather than trying to render the background at the same time. Because, you know, the background's not important to the actual gameplay. You just set up a line for where you die. You don't have to render that stuff. It's a good system. And because you had a CD, you could stream it during the level play. It was a really good system. And as you can see it, that game looks so much better than Star Fox. Because, like, look at this by comparison. Blocky, ugly ships. Like, completely featureless terrain. There's a concrete arch for him to go through. How thrilling and imaginative. Like, look at this.
Covered Star Fox and Sylphid side by side, as they both featured polygon graphics of sorts. It's heavily implied through the comparison that the Mega CD is actually rendering half.
Okay, wait. Let's see from a Sylphid. When compared to Star Fox, extremely detailed and realistic looking. Planet seen alone. Advanced facial geometry. Draw lights and shadows. Okay. I don't know that it is implying that it was being rendered live, but who cares if it was rendered live? It looks better.
500,000 polygons. And they asked the reader which game they'd rather play based on the screenshots. Also, before you think...
Also, again, it just looks better than Star Fox.
EGM have gone completely mad with their caption saying that...
Did you see that? He dodged a beam from a laser cannon on a giant spaceship. That's badass.
Sega CD disc is 4.4 gigabits. They're not wrong there.
Of course they're not wrong. A bit is 8 bytes, so 700 megabytes is how much is on a CD. Times 8 is... Now I'm going to pretend to be good at math. It's 56. Like... 756, so 5.6 gigabits is the maximum amount of space on a drive. And of course, they only had 4.4 gigabits on there, but still. And if my math isn't failing me now, that means it was like, 7? I guess 600 megabytes, I guess, ish. Right? Anyway.
Gigabit and gigabyte are two different types of data measurement.
So he's just assuming his audience doesn't know the difference between a bit and a byte. Which, okay, maybe they don't. Maybe he's fair, but it's like, it's not like they were trying to pull one over on you. That's just the actual terminology. You use a bigger... Hey, Larry, why is it called 4K? I've never seen you do a video where you're like, ugh, It's so idiotic that all these reviewers call things 4K, when up until now, 360, 720, 1080, that's all been referring to the vertical number of pixels. But 4K is the horizontal number of pixels. You're being lied to, and anyone who calls it 4K is a moron. No, people are allowed to use bigger numbers to sound fancy. That's not idiocy. That's marketing. And marketing sucks, and I'm against marketing, but it's not idiocy. Jesus, Larry. Like, I knew based on the first one you're just going to be wrong all the time, but this is getting bad.
So we can't really add that to their list of incompetence.
Yeah, but you kind of sound like you want to. And again, what was incompetent here? They said that the still feed has gorgeous backgrounds, which it does, and it has more detailed models, which it does. What's the problem? Where is the incompetence here? No one said this was all being rendered live on the Sega CD. It never said that. And you can say, well, they were tricking you by implying. Maybe, but it didn't say it, did it? And the fact that they tricked people into thinking that, if that's what their intent, means they're not incompetent. It means they're good at their damn jobs. Anyway, the point is, you couldn't be more wrong about this, Larry. Because again, let me play the Sylphie looks so much better than Star Fox card. There's no
to be fair,
look at this! Star Fox on the 64 doesn't look as good as this.
GM wasn't the only 90s.
I mean, the enemies do, but the backgrounds didn't.
Gaming magazine that managed to be hoodwinked by the trickery on display in Sylphid. The UK's official Sega magazine was also fooled into believing that the...
Okay. Alright, it is.
Mega CD was outperforming even the best arcade hardware at the time. And that was written by someone who's better at counting frame rates than polygons.
I don't know who that is. I mean, it looks fantastic. Also, you could do a racing game using the exact same effect, probably, and do a very good job. But the point is, Larry, you couldn't be more wrong about any of this. They weren't, you can say that they were being dishonest, maybe, but they sure as hell weren't idiotic, and they weren't, incompetent. They were just putting the best face forward of the product they were selling, which you're allowed to do. And yes, it is selling. That's how magazines worked back in the day. They were marketing arms, except for the actual review sections, which would kind of have, like, an appearance of some sort of independence, right? But let's face it, plenty of magazines also sold reviews. Anyway, I can't believe I forgot to say this. The idea that someone would give a Doom a bad review in 1994 to get attention is insane, because that's something that really started up because of the internet. I mean, there are certain magazines that would have, like, a guy who was a famous crank who would hate everything, and you'd, like, read it to enjoy him saying an obviously insane thing about how bad something was. But that's not what that review was. That was a completely fair critique of Doom at the time. And it's only now, well, not now, I mean, I was accused of doing that when I gave, Quake, oh my god, Halo 3 a 7. Because it's a 7 game, let's be honest. The point is, like, that's not something that existed at the time, so you also impugning the guy's motives makes you kind of a shady dick. Just putting that out there. You called everyone idiots. I'm calling you a shady dick. Here we are.
At the 2015 Sony E3 conference, one game that's been requested by players for years was finally confirmed. No, not Shenmue 3, but a remake of Final Fantasy VII. However, fans had to wait another 5 years before they could play Square Enix's magnum opus. But come the March of 2020, gamers finally got their grubby little mitts on it in the form of a demo for the PlayStation 4. Tech channels on YouTube analysed it, gamers sailed through it. However, Kotaku writer Chris Kohler found the game just too darn difficult, and the experience turned him off the game.
I have basically zero idea how to play that first boss fight. A million interlocking systems all thrown at you at once,
said the confused gentleman. As you'd expect, almost immediately, people began mocking him in the replies. while others really got to the heart of the matter and wondered how a so-called professional games journalist could lack the abilities to pass such an early part of the game. And when you really deconstruct what Mr. Cola said, he starts to look pretty stupid. He had zero idea how to fight the first boss. For his sake, I hope he does mean the iconic Scorpion boss and not the mid-area sweeper that you come up against beforehand.
A million interlocking systems all thrown at you at once.
Which would be true, if not for the fact each part of the battle system is explained to you in full via the game's...
Okay, for the record, I mean, I'm still not signing off on Larry's hilarious voices, right? But he is right about this. Like, Final Fantasy VII is not a complicated game, and the tutorial takes like an hour to play. And I think that demo basically was the whole tutorial. And they teach you step by step every single part. Like, you would literally have to not paying like any attention whatsoever to the game to not get how to play the game based on the tutorial. Like, I will say, Larry is completely right about this guy. And yeah, he's right. 100%. No notes on this one.
Forced pop-up tutorial system for around the first 15 minutes of the game. Not to mention that the battle system is not a million miles away from the turn-based system found in the original.
It's actually very different, and Larry, you shouldn't have to have played a previous game to know how to play the current game. You had your good argument with for the fact that the demo is essentially just the game's tutorial, and there's no excuse to not know how to play the game. This, you're really reaching. It's making you look really small and petty. Now, I know you can say, well, you should know about small and petty, because, heck, you're the one going through every line of this guy's video and pointing out how he's wrong about everything. And that's true. But given that I'm able to completely demolish you in this video for all of your idiocy, shouldn't you take that as some kind of oh, well, he must know what he's talking about, because, you know, he's making me look like an idiot, so maybe I'm a little more of an expert at these things than you are, Larry. Anyway, the point is, no, Final Fantasies, apart from the menu, like having visual similarities, Final Fantasy system has 7 system. It bears no resemblance to active time battle from Final Fantasy 7. I know I said Final Fantasy 7 twice there, but it's clear what I meant. All right. They did still call it active time battle, though. Like, they're not delusional.
It's one release that, in the last 25 years, has been played by everyone in the entire world. But somehow, some way, a person who is paid to play and write about games all day found this little menu system right here just way beyond their mental capacity. Well, that's okay, Chris. There is a media outlet somewhere just crying out for someone to review Hello Kitty on the PS1 for them. Let's just hope a paraplegic hamster doesn't get in there before you do.
Okay, so up until this point, I'm like, am I being too mean on Larry? Being too hard on Larry, being too mean to Larry? That's right, I corrected myself. And now he's just being a dick for no reason. And I know he's done that a lot, but this one seemed especially roof to me. So yeah, I know that you being cruel is what your audience comes for, but it doesn't really help make your arguments more sound. I'm actually kind of excited to see what the 5th one was, because, like, 3 was just Larry saying unbelievably. Like, the first 3 were Larry saying unbelievably stupid things that kind of demonstrates he has no idea what game journalism is, or what it's for, or really how anything works. And then with this one, he's like, he actually said something really sensible. He did it in a dickish, unhelpful way, but it's like, he was right. The whole first hour, and I know I'm repeating myself, but the whole first hour of Final Fantasy VII Remake is a tutorial. And so if you played that hour, there's no excuse for not knowing how to play the game unless you weren't paying attention. Like, he is just 100%, yes, right. So, is he going to save it on the last one, or is he going to massively screw it up on the last one? I have not played these games. I've never played a Pokemon game that didn't have Snap in the title. Unless you count Smash Brothers, which, why would you? There's just Pokemon in it. It's not a Pokemon game. Seriously, have I played any... No, I've never played a Pokemon game that wasn't a Pokemon Snap game. Even the fighting game, which is weird, because I do like fighting games.
Alright, yeah, this is an obvious one, but if I don't put it on this list, I'll get a million "you forgot" comments. So how could I miss one of the most ridiculous things ever written by IGN?
Okay, well that's a high bar. And apparently this is a very famous thing I've totally missed out on.
In 2014, Nintendo released Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire on the Nintendo 3DS, remakes of 2002's Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire on the Game Boy Advance. When IGN reviewed the original GBA games, they liked them and scored them highly. But when they reviewed the 3DS remakes, they scored them lower.
I hope he's not saying that that's what the problem is, because when newer games change and innovate and make things better, just re-releasing an old game with no meaningful gameplay changes or innovations will have it be a worse looking game in comparison to the games of today. Now that might not be what he's about to say, but like, that's why you can't go back and play Terminator Skynet today, even though Terminator Skynet, I think, is the first game to have mouse look shooting. Anyway.
Even though they're largely the same game, but from a different camera angle. Now, the reason this Pokemon review was so ridiculed is because of this little part in...
Was that a different camera angle? Like, don't Pokemons normally have... Pokemon games normally have you, like, beside the shoulder of your monster as you're fighting? Or is he talking about the overworld, which is now slightly canted to the side instead of being... Well, no, it was always top down. And canted to the side, because you're not seeing the tops of buildings. Anyway.
In the con section of the final review score.
Okay.
Too much water.
Okay. Too much water. I can't stress enough the extent to which I haven't played any Pokemon games. Again, except for Pokemon Snap, but I'm going to go on a limb and suggest that when that says too much water, this is my prediction, we'll see what happens. My prediction is, too much water means there isn't enough Pokemon variety in the game, and there are too many water types. That is my prediction. I don't know what he's going to say, that's my prediction. But if I, never having played a game, saw that line at the bottom of a Pokemon game, that is what I would think it meant.
When you read that, you instantly think that the reviewer has lost their mind and started...
I didn't. I thought it meant there were too many water types.
...started complaining about the land mass to water ratio in Nintendo's latest Pikachu em up.
No, you'd have to be an idiot or someone reading the line out of context or, how shall I put this, with an ulterior motive in mind to think that.
Even though this...
Or you'd have to be someone who knows absolutely nothing about Pokemon, like has never heard of the series at all. And if that's the case, why are you commenting and reading a Pokemon review?
It's not
even the Pokemon review, just the last slug line of the Pokemon review.
Really what IGN meant. That's how the phrase was taken by readers. IGN are at fault for readers getting the wrong idea, and there are two reasons to blame them here. When you write...
Wait, they're saying they're at fault? How are they at fault? Let me just rewind this. I want to make sure he said they were at fault.
That's how the phrase was taken by readers. IGN are at fault for readers getting the wrong idea.
I cannot wait to find out why IGN is at fault for people misreading that.
And there are two reasons to blame them here. When you write a review, but then attach an arbitrary number at the end to determine...
He just said arbitrary. He's nitpicking, I'm going to nitpick.
...the game's quality. No one reads the review, they just skip straight to the end to see the score.
You know, up until this point in this video, I had thought of Larry Bundy, Jr., as being a guy who, like, doesn't really get what game journalism is for. Like, doesn't really understand game journalism. Probably doesn't get that, like, games can mean things. Probably doesn't believe games are art. You know, one of those guys. One of those, the colors are shiny, so I like game. He seems like that kind of a guy. Like, look at his wholehearted defense, like his blinkered defense of unbelievably repetitive and shallow game Doom. Like saying Doom should be immune to criticism because he liked Doom. So, I've gotten here, and now I feel like he doesn't just not understand what game journalism is for. I think he actively hates game journalism. Like, he's against reviewing games. Because, okay, He just said putting an arbitrary score at the end. I mean, he said arbitrary because he doesn't know how words are said, but it's not arbitrary. Okay? Let's do the whole dictionary definition thing, shall we? Here's the dictionary definition of arbitrary. Based on a random choice or personal whim, rather than any reason or system. His meal times were entirely arbitrary. Now, obviously, and I can't believe I have to say this, because I thought this was pretty obvious. An arbitrary score would be a score that they just wrote down and didn't justify at all. Literally, the entire point of the review is to explain that this is making me angry. It's taking all I have not to swear right now, so just... The entire point of the various, words that he used, all that stuff you glazed past to get to the number, how you scroll down like you say all people do. Shouldn't have done a even slightly funny voice there. Funny voices are a Larry Bundy thing. I shouldn't stoop to his level. You think that all people skip all of the words and just get to the score, and that makes it arbitrary. Except that's not true. The entire point of the review, like going top to bottom, is to provide a critical framework explaining why they gave the game the number score they gave it. That's what the review is for. A number could only be arbitrary if there was nothing explaining it. By definition, if nothing is explaining it. You might not like the explanation, but if someone comes up with a system for reviewing games and says, I am basing games on this criteria and judging it against that criteria, it is by definition not an arbitrary score. Now we can get into the definitions of who gets to blah, 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 decide what good is. That's a conversation I'm happy to have. I don't think, based on this video so far, I don't think Larry Bundy is capable of having that conversation, but I'd be willing to. The real issue here, though, is his contempt for the whole review. Like, he really does seem to have contempt for this review. And that troubles me. Like, a lot. Like, a lot. Like, okay, so he said, nobody reads the review, everybody just looks at the score. That's, on its face, false. Let's see what he says next.
Rendering the entire wall of text obsolete.
And then he said the dumbest thing he could have possibly said. So, alright, I've talked about I'm a game critic. Literally, I work for game critics, I've written a lot of reviews, I guess. I mean, if not 1,000, close to 1,000 video game reviews. And what Larry Bundy is saying here is that everything I've ever written was pointless because people only look at the score. Now, I'm against game reviews being scored, but the conventions of the marketplace require us to score reviews. I'm against reviews having scores. In fact, in a game critic's review, you have to highlight a hidden area to see a numerical score, because that is how much we don't care about scores and don't promote scores. But to say that other sites that do offer prominent scores, that doing so invalidates the text of their review and makes it utterly useless is... It is such a cynical worldview that, I wonder how Larry Bundy, just deals with the whole video game industry. If he thinks that little, not just of the people making the games and sending out the games and expecting them to be looked at, but if he thinks that little of the video game playing, buying audience, that they don't care at all to find out what people think about games before buying them, playing them, or honestly, just reading a review of a game they're not interested in actually playing to find out about it. Some people do that, Larry. And I know I'm taking this personally, okay? It's clear that I'm taking this personally because I am a video game reviewer and somewhat of an accomplished one. But how can you honestly think this about games? And you could say, well, he's being hyperbolic. Is he being hyperbolic, though? I don't know that he is being literally he is being hyperbolic. But I think he actually means this. Because if he didn't mean what he's saying, then this entry makes no sense. So, like, I'm sure that the too much water, like, let's just say.
The other fault here is straight up poor quality writing.
Nope.
When they say too much water, what they actually meant is there's an unbalanced amount of water-type Pokemon in the game.
Okay, and I assume he's about to say, they said that in the review?
Meaning that a decently powered electric type will see you hammer through a huge chunk of the game with ease. This is actually in the text part of...
Well, what the... Then what the hell are you complaining about? This is apparently... It is totally idiotic to use a bullet point that doesn't voluminously... I'll try that word again. To use a bullet point that doesn't voluminously explain a problem that they had with the game. Hey, you know where they did that? In the goddamn review! Maybe go up and read it if you want to know what too much water means, you absolute buffoon. I mean, if you hadn't actually read the review, right, and proven that you're a willfully ignorant person, I would have assumed you couldn't read at this point. That is how dumb the point you're making here is. So, let's see how he wraps this up.
Of the review, but no one saw that because it's easier to skip to the shiny, easy-to-read number at the end.
Hi. You know what the crazy part is? Like, it's not just that he has contempt for video game reviewers. He really is demonstrating an undisguised contempt for people who are the target of review audiences. It is his assumption that no one has ever read a video game review and just skips to the end, looks at the number, and then moves on to the next one. But Larry, I'm going to ask you something. If that's true, why would they have clicked on the review in the first place? If they only cared about the number, they can just go to Metacritic and see what everyone gave it as a number. And people have done that. Not just the average score. You just click on Metacritic and there's a giant wall of all of the quote-unquote trusted sites and what all of them gave them and like a single line of text from that review. So Larry, if they didn't want to read the review, why did they click on the review? Why did they go to Metacritic? See that Metacritic gave it a 7.8. Oh, sorry. See that IGN and Metacritic gave it a 7.8. Why did they then click on it? Because your whole formulation is that people don't care about reviews and only care about numbers. But if they only cared about numbers, they wouldn't be going to IGN at all, would they? Oh, well, they have to go to IGN to see... See, I'm doing the funny voices again. It's hard not to. Larry's right. It is a crutch to use funny voices to make someone sound like an idiot. And I don't need to do that, because Larry sounds like an idiot all on his own. But seriously, who would go to Metacritic, see that IGN gave it a 7.8, and if they only cared about the number, they would just go and move on to the next thing. But people are clicking on that thing on Metacritic to find out why it got a 7.8. So now Larry is asking us to believe in a world where someone only cares about the number, but then they click on the review on Metacritic, and they open up the review, but then instead of reading it, they scroll to the bottom to look at the number again. Does that seem impossible to anyone else? Is Larry Bundy describing the real world, or is he describing some insane fantasy that he has because he hates video game criticism? And this is a point where someone might say, well, actually, Hoguru, he's a well-respected video game critic in England, and you just don't know that. And maybe that's true, but if that is true, that doesn't say great things about the quality of video game critics living in England, because, you know, for that to be true, they would have to be assuming no one's reading their work. And don't get me wrong, fun stuff can happen when you assume no one's reading your work. But yeah, this is one of the dumbest takes I've ever heard. And this video has been, with one small caveat, nothing but dumb takes. Like, he's really bad at this.
And that's what people did. They saw the game had too much water, and then began pumping out memes on an industrial scale.
Oh. So. Huh. So Larry thinks that because people took a single line out of context from a review, saw the comedy potential for it, and made a bunch of memes, that makes the comment itself, to use his own title, totally idiotic. Larry, because memers find something funny and make jokes about it, that doesn't mean the thing itself was dumb. It just means that they found a way to turn it into a meme. That's just how memes work. And as a man on the internet in a prominent position, certainly more prominent than mine, you'd think you would know that. But apparently he doesn't. He thinks that if something has been held up for public ridicule, it must be bad. It can't just be that people misunderstood something, or didn't even misunderstand it. They just thought that if they clipped it out of context, it would be funny. Even though that's like 90% of memes are stuff that makes sense in context. But if you clip it out, it sounds funny. That is like 90% of memes. And the thing is, I was about to criticize this, but it's kind of indicative of his whole worldview. Because remember, this is the same guy who said that Doom can't be criticized, completely fairly, by the way. He's saying that Doom can't be criticized because people like Doom. And now he's saying this line is stupid because people made memes about it. And that's his only justification. But he admitted in his little segment that it was a perfectly reasonable criticism to make about the game that is explained in the body of the review. Like, I don't want to go so far as to call Larry here anti-intellectual, right? But he sure is really weirdly, suspiciously against people, like, taking critical looks at things. And that is a weird and suspicious thing to be, dude. All right, let's see who wraps this up.
So many, in fact, I doubt IGN will ever be able to forget this. Which is probably for the best.
Why would they? I mean, they made a perfectly reasonable comment, and then they got a lot of views because it became a meme. How is this bad for IGN? Like, you kind of look like a dummy for saying that it was bad writing, but IGN did just fine. Wurmple is a Cascoon. Oh, and then it becomes a Butterfree, or something like that.
Hello, you. Thanks ever so much for...
So I'm not going to subscribe, and you're terrible. Oh. Okay, well, I've been really hard on Larry Bundy Jr. today. But it turns out that Dodgy Kebab, when that's... I didn't know kebab was spelled with 2 A's, or it's a joke name. Not going to look that one up. Apparently wrote this episode. And edited it. So... It is not Larry's opinion. Okay. I'm going to offer a caveat of an apology. This is going to be like 20% of an apology to Larry. Larry, sorry for calling you a moron and an idiot and a guy who has no idea how anything works so many times in this video. Because obviously I said it a lot. It's a 55-minute video or something insane like that. About a, 15-minute, piece of media. Sorry I called you that so many times, because obviously it's Dodgy Kebab here, who is an absolute buffoon who doesn't understand how anything works. Like, literally is just a guy who doesn't get, or girl, you know what? guy or gal, they don't understand how anything works in video games, criticism, and more generally the world, okay? So, yeah. Obviously, they're the bigger one to blame. But here's the thing. It's your channel. You chose this script to record. You read all the lines. You obviously checked the edit. You approved it and you uploaded it. You are not blameless in this. The unbelievably stupid and, in some cases, toxic opinions here may not be yours, but you chose to promote them. So, while you are not 100% guilty for being just kind of like a dude with trash opinions, the way Dodgy Kebab is, you are 80% guilty because you're the one who foisted Dodgy Kebab's opinions on the rest of us with the imprimatur that your channel brings to that. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, I'm not subscribing to the channel. You're bad at your job. I mean, I assume this is your job and it's not just a side thing like it is for me. I mean, this is your day job, right? Like, you're not like going into an office and doing this on the weekends. I have no idea. I feel like you had a book, or am I thinking of Slope's Game Room again? Anyway, the point is, you suck at this. Do better. I've been the hidden object guru. I managed to keep from swearing. It wasn't easy. Because of how unbelievably insulting this was to the entire field of games journalism, a field I am part of and care a lot about. But I think I managed to get through this without any major swears. But you're bad, Larry. You're really bad, Dodgy Kebab. Please go away until you've actually thought about things for more than 3 or 4 seconds. All right, I'm off. Oh, like and subscribe. Sorry.